My name is Eric Garceau. Welcome, everyone. I will be your host for this afternoon through the next 25 or so minutes. I will go through the importance of being able to identify identities, manage them, set privileges, and monitor and remediate. So thank you very much. As you might have heard, if you would like to ask questions, please use the chat box. But at the same time, you need to put in question to Delinea or just Delinea, and we will be able to help you out. And that appears to be a limitation of the Zoom breakout feature, which doesn't segregate the chat boxes, only the breakouts. So on this, we'll get started right away because we don't have a lot of time and we have a lot of material to cover. I am assisted with my colleague, Alex Villegrain. He's supposed to be on this call, but he's on this call as myself. So there's two of us, but really there's Alex and myself. And Alex will be conducting the demonstration part of this presentation. Next chart. So here's an illustration of the context, which I briefly described earlier on the panel. For those of you who listened to the panel, the first circle on the left represents identity sprawl or identity proliferation. Identities are proliferating because of the ongoing the increasing use of cloud technologies, increasing use of outside vendors, increasing use of administrators having different privileges. Yet, if you look at the second circle is really to illustrate perimeter security, firewalls, VPN. Those are legacy technologies that are still being used today, but don't necessarily and adequately handle the proliferation of identities. I've mentioned during the panel earlier that 60% of the threats, 62% to be exact, of the threats were coming from the supply chain. The supply chain. I apologize. And if you let one of your vendors come into your network through a traditional methodology like VPN, well, that outside vendor will now have access to all of your network as opposed to just a very specific portion. So these legacy technologies need to be addressed. The third circle represents the proliferation of data and data location. Data is now in your data center. Data is now in the cloud. Data is with your vendors. Data is everywhere. There's also proliferation of infrastructure and systems, right? And the circle number 4 is really not only the fact that hackers are becoming more sophisticated than ever, but the introduction of generative AI is giving tools to these hackers to do things that they weren't good at doing before or weren't able to do before. And a very simple example is hackers are now using tools such as ChatGPT to create phishing emails that are without flaws, without mistakes. They have the proper logo. They don't have any correction mistakes. The generative AI can create a phishing email with a high degree of efficiency, which was not necessarily the case for a Russian hacker 2 years ago, right? So all of these tools, and I mentioned that during the panel as well, all of these tools can be addressed with point solutions. One that's being used often and very much is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is one of those tools that organizations are rolling out. We'll see later today that we can granularly apply MFA to single secrets or single identities or multiple MFAs. We'll talk about that. But what we are looking at is that we need all of these point solutions to talk to one another in such a way that you can easily identify, detect, mitigate, and remediate identity threats. So how does Delinea address this, right? Delinea is addressing this by addressing multiple disciplines within the identity framework and also with new technologies. And for those who don't know us, Delinea is really the merger between two vendors in the PAM marketplace, the privileged access marketplace. One is Thycotic and one is Centrify. Thycotic was known for their secret server vault, which is an encrypted vault that is used to store secrets, secrets being mostly passwords, but secrets nevertheless. Centrify was also a Magic Quadrant vendor, a Gartner Magic Quadrant vendor in the PAM marketplace. However, Centrify was focusing a little bit more on privileges. Once a user is in a system, what can they do in that system, right? So we're putting these two technologies together onto one platform. We will be using modern technologies provided by cloud service providers, such as containers, such as microservices, to provide a service-based platform to connect all of those identity touch points that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, right? So the vision is a zero trust platform approach to access and privilege. First thing is to discover and prevent credential theft. So discovering identities, storing identities, managing identities. Then you give them the privileges, right? What kind of privileges will each user have? And if needed, how can I increase or decrease privileges for these users, just to make sure that they always have just the least amount of privileges that they need to perform their task. But more recently, with the identity sprawl, the proliferation of identities everywhere in your network and outside of your network, how do we monitor and analyze identity, and how do we secure them, right? And at the end, if we can identify threatening behavior, how do we stop it? And if it has already occurred, how do we remediate it, right? So to go back to the use case of today, the first thing to do is to secure your credential, discover vault secrets. And by the way, this is a good segue into an announcement that we've made just today with quantum encryption. The Delinea platform now supports quantum encryption, which isolates or protects your identities in the vault from decryption from quantum computers. Quantum computers, as you might know, can already decrypt AES 128 encrypted data. Soon, these computers will be able to decrypt AES 256 data, which is the encryption mechanism that we use. So now we have a quantum safe encryption mechanism in our secret server database. Now you'll tell me, for those of you who know, there's beginning to be a threat in the industry that is basically a harvest and decrypt later threat, which is harvest the secrets today, harvest the encrypted data today, and when quantum computers will be able to decrypt them, then you can decrypt that data. If it's in 2 years, it'll be in 2 years, but it'll still be able to decrypt it. So that's why you want to move to quantum encryption right now, to be able to avoid or to prevent harvest and decrypt. Number two, VPN-less secure access. The goal here is your users with privileges, your administrators, your executives, everyone in your supply chain, outside vendors, consultants. What these users need is least privilege. Therefore, you control what system they access, and once they're in the system, what can they do in that system? So we have a solution that allows you to, from a single browser, to connect directly into the secret vault. From the secret vault, once you're logged in, you'll get a menu item that says, here are the systems you can access, right? Click on one item, you'll access that system. But these users coming from the outside will not be able to access anywhere else in the network than the secret vault, where all the credentials are stored. By the way, one of the advantages of having a vault is the capability of logging everything that is being done from each user, and even recording videos or movies and keystrokes of what each users will be doing, and later on reviewing these videos using artificial intelligence to be able to pinpoint specific actions or activities during a session, right? I've mentioned the control of privileges and entitlements. You want to be able to provide least privilege, augment privilege on the fly, just in time, for both server users and workstation users. And finally, with the emergence of artificial intelligence, you want to be able to identify threat, right? Detect and respond to those threats, right? So Delinea provides now the platform that will enable this for you. And I'll go through this very quickly, and afterwards I'll hand it out to Alex. The platform is, like I said earlier, the merger of the technologies that were acquired when Psychotic and Centrify merged. However, last month, we made another acquisition, a company by the name of Optimize, which will provide more features and functions in terms of identity. And I'll go through this very quickly. So secret server, that's the circle on the right, on the left here. Secret server is the vault for secure credential. I've talked about the VPN-less secure access. That's what we call something called our remote access services. Privilege control for servers is an agent that runs on the server that ensures that users are coming in from the vault, that someone is not trying to access that specific server directly without going through the vault. So it gives you an extra layer of protection, right? Because what you want is you want your administrators to go in through the vault to be able to log the activity of these users. But the privilege control for server module also does what I've been referring to in the past few minutes, control privileges in real time, right? The last there, privilege control for cloud, that is the result of our acquisition of Optimize, which provides two things: the monitoring of identity activities in the cloud. So when identities are being used to connect to the cloud, when identities are being used for machine-to-machine communication, when identities are being used for inter-cloud dialogue or communication, you want to be able to monitor these IDs, right? Because they're not necessarily controlled by the vault that's on premise or the vault that connects to your systems. When you connect to the cloud, sometimes you don't have control over where the identities are going. So you want to make sure that you monitor this. So with a cloud infrastructure entitlement manager, or a KEEM, which is provided by this company, Optimize, that we've acquired, you can monitor the identities. But moreover, the recent discipline of ITDR, Identity Threat Detection and Response, which is a combination of technology and services, you can easily identify identities that have behaviors that are not expected, detect those behaviors, remediate the behaviors, and prevent these identities from doing any damage or harm in your organization. So in a nutshell, this is what Delinea is all about. I'll let Alex do the demonstration, and then I'll come back for a quick wrap-up after Alex's demonstration. So Alex, it's up to you.
Okay, good afternoon. So let me start my video here and share my screen. Give me 2 seconds. I got few use cases. I have three use cases I like to share with the team, with people in the breakout room. So first of all, here I have an instance already built here. Okay, I have my subdomain called Canuck in this case, Delinea.app. This is our platform. and the user I'm going to use here is an Active Directory user. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a login. You have option, obviously, to do two-factor authentication as well. So you can set that up. We support virtually any type of two-factor. In this case, I didn't put a two-factor just for the purpose of the demo. So I have access to the platform. What you see here is the home page on the left-hand side. On top, I have my vault. If I click on Secret Server, this is the vault that I have access. As a user, I've been access to a number of folder. Now, a vault is a structure, a hierarchy of folder. In this case, this is an endpoint account, and you can see here I can access different subfolder to go to my specific secret. So as an example, here I have a secret called local user 1. I can click on local user 1 and just launch a session here. So what's going to happen, I have two choices in this case. I got the remote access service that I will show you in a moment. Or also I can call my PuTTY launcher, which is a local launcher on my machine. So when I launch it, basically I'm gonna have a connection into this specific server. It will connect to the username. It will inject username and password and connect to the machine defining the secret. As you can see here, I have a session that just started. So if I look at who am I? You can see I'm local user 1. That's what is defining the secret. I'm just going to leave this for the moment right now. And I'm going to go back to the secret server. So you can see here, if I go into detail to look at the account, just to understand how we build a secret, the secret has the information. This is the template I use. I got the username. I have a password defined. I have the ability to hide the password as well. And I have launcher. And the launcher I used was the PuTTY launcher. So this is typically all the vaulted secret that we have. You can vault secret and you can share through a role-based access control, can give access to different secret within your vault. So as a second example, what I like to share is what we call the privilege control for servers. Eric mentioned that earlier. We can have an inventory of all the computer. What I shown before was the vault. With the vault, we start with a secret, basically the account. We specify the computers, and we can inject username, password, and connect. In this case, I've been able to discover all the machine I have within my system. All those machines have an agent running on this. For instance, I got my Lin server 1. It's a Linux server. I can click on the launch, and I have the option to either use my account. I'm logging as an AD user right now. I can do a passwordless authentication. So I launch my account. It will connect me into that server automatically with my Active Directory credentials. So one of the options we have with privilege control for servers, we support AD bridging. So I can basically all my Linux server as an agent, and they've been Kerberized. So they join the domain. So you can see here another option with the agent allow me to do a two-factor. For the simplicity, I just gotta use a security question. I do two, answer my question, and then I'm gonna have access to the specific server in question. You can see here I'm logged in as Elias. Elias is an AD user. If I do an AD info, you can see I joined, oops, a little typo here. You can see I joined the domain. So basically my domain is delinea-sc.lab, and that server here, Lin SVR01, I joined the domain. So I'm part of the domain already. So this is one of the feature we have privilege control with privilege control for servers. I can do AD bridging. So I no longer I need to use my local account on my Linux box. I can use AD account, and I do two-factor authentication. And something else you notice I'm using here a VPN-less remote access service. So you can see here I can do a clipboard, snapshot, and in this case I'm just going to log out of my session and go back to the secret server. This is another way. So I can also log into another server, let's say a Windows server, even that Windows server as an agent. So when I'm going to use some credential, again, I'm going to use AD credential. I'm just going to do a connection. With that connection, again, through my remote access service, I can access my machine. You can see here, we're going to do a two-factor as well. So this privilege control server is really good in situation where people manage to go around the vault and go straight to a server And then by multi-factor authentication, I can protect that asset. So I'm answering the question, two-factor, and then I can access my server. Now I did access my server here. So just a quick little example here. If I try to access Event Viewer, for instance, I'm logging as a standard user right now. I'm called Elias, so I have no admin right. So if I go to my Event Viewer and I try to go window logs and access the security here, you can see I'm denied because I don't have admin right. So something else I can do elevation if I'm accessing this little icon here, but my default is it's my default desktop. I've been provided an elevation as a full administrator I've been given the role. So if I select this, I can elevate I can elevate myself as a full administrator just in time with just enough privilege. So the first thing I have to do, I have to authenticate. So I'm gonna enter my password. And then I'm asking again the two-factor, since this is a privilege session I'm doing here. Enter my two-factor. And what's gonna happen? I'm gonna have a new desktop at this time. Oh, I have to do it again. I missed my things. So what's gonna happen? I'm gonna have a privilege desktop, with more capability, admin capability. Hopefully I enter the right password this time. Okay, next. There we go. And you can see here, I have a new desktop. If I try to do Event Viewer again this time, you're going to see here, I can go to window logs and I can do security. And this time I got the right privilege. The nice thing about this, I can define the level of privilege, just enough privilege. I can define the length of the session. That session can have been an hour or a day, and the privilege can be full admin or even less privilege based on what you need. So I'm just going to sign out of this session. And I just want to show you a last use case here where I'm a remote access user. So I'm just going to log out as Elias. I'm just going to connect as a contractor. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to come in as a contractor. Next, enter the password. So in this scenario, for instance, you can see I have a vault access. I got less access. The administrator give me access only to those two here. Again, I can select an account that is provided to me, and I can launch. So when I'm gonna launch, I can open with remote access. Again, this is a VPN-less. There's just a browser with leveraging HTML5. There's no need to have a client, and then I have access to that. And something else we can do file transfer. I can upload or download file. If I upload file, I can get a file on my machine and just upload into actually, in this case, in my Linux box and so on. So this is what I wanted to share for the demo. And then I'm just gonna let Eric take over again. Eric?
Thank you, Alex. Delinea would like to offer you the possibility of getting trained. So if we go through a discovery session, a proof of concept, and then you actually procure the Delinea platform, well, for you as a thank you for attending this afternoon, we will provide you with 1 year of free training, which would normally be $3,000 US. So we took your names, and we'll be in touch through the Delinea representative, the MoviPro representatives. And if we go through the whole cycle and you end up being a Delinea customer, this will be a bonus that you will receive. If you need to ask questions, please use the chat box. and enter Delinea as the first word of your question so we can answer your questions because we know it's going to be directed to us. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening.